Okay, for 7.5, we are going to start factoring, and we're going to factor in the form this ax squared plus bx plus c. Now, when you look at this, how many terms does that have? Okay, by the way, this is a b. Look, my b's and my 6's look a lot alike, but that's a b. X squared plus bx plus c. This is a trinomial. There's 3 terms. So we're going to be given trinomials, and we are going to be factoring them. Also, make sure you notice that this is a quadratic. It has a degree 2. So we're going to be working with quadratics and trinomials. Okay, and I just want to back up for a minute. So on the previous worksheet, you might have been asked to multiply x plus 2 times x plus 3. Okay, what process do we use to multiply those 2 binomials together? Okay, hopefully you said FOIL. So I want you to pause the video and I want you to FOIL that out. Okay, when you're done FOILing, you should come up with a trinomial x squared plus 5x plus 6. When you look at this back number here, how does that relate to the binomials that you multiplied? Okay, well hopefully you said that number came from taking the 2 times the 3. That gave me the 6. I multiplied those together to get positive 6. Okay, and then we want to look at this middle coefficient, positive 5. How do these 2 values relate to give us that positive 5? Well, this time I take those 2 values and I add them together to get that middle term. Okay, so for the last value in the trinomial, we are multiplying 2 times 3, but the middle coefficient, that 5, we're taking 2 and adding it to 3. Okay, so here would be another one. I took x minus 7 times the quantity x minus 2. Go ahead and pause the video and FOIL that for me. Okay, when you're done FOILing, you should have x squared minus 9x plus 14. And again, when we look at these back numbers here, this positive 14 came from taking negative 7 times negative 2. A negative times a negative is positive 14. Okay, this middle coefficient, that negative 9, came from adding the negative 7 and the negative 2. A negative plus a negative is still going to be negative. Okay, so we want to think of that relationship as we begin to factor. So here's what your problems are going to look like today. The directions are now going to say factor, and they are going to give you a trinomial to work with. Okay, you're going to be given a trinomial and they're going to ask you to factor it. So they're asking you to come up with what two binomials were multiplied or FOILed in order to get this trinomial. Okay, well we know when we're dealing with x squared, to get an x squared, first term times first term, both of these binomials are going to have to start with x. First term times first term is going to give you that x squared. Now, to get what goes inside the parentheses with the x, we're going to start with this last number, and we're going to say, okay, what numbers multiplied together will give us 36? Well, we might use 1 and 36. We might use 2 and 18. We might use 3 and 12. We could use 4 and 9. We could use 6 and 6. So we have a lot of possibilities here. But now we're going to look at this middle number and say, okay, to get that middle value, it was the sum of the 2 numbers that we used. So which of these possibilities has a sum of 13? Okay, well that's the 4 and the 9. So I'm going to say x plus 4 and x plus 9. Okay, a positive 4 plus a positive 9 is a positive 13. And a positive 4 times a positive 9 is a positive 36. So those are going to be our 2 factors. Now if you have the x plus 9 first and the x plus 4 second, that's okay. The order doesn't matter there. Okay, let's try another one. Okay, I might ask you to factor x squared minus 8x plus 15. Okay, we're going to factor it. Okay, again, the variable that we're using is an x squared, so each one of these is going to start with x. And if the variable changes, so maybe it's y in the equation, then you would just lead off with a y. Okay, to figure out what the rest of the parentheses will be, we're going to look at that last number. We're going to say, okay, what's going to give us a positive 15? Well, it could be 1 and 15, it could be 3 and 5. But also, if I multiplied a negative 1 times a negative 15, or a negative 3 times a negative 5, a negative times a negative is going to be positive well. So actually, I didn't do that up here, but we actually have more possibilities. Okay, now, which of these pairs can we add together to get a negative 8? Okay, and hopefully you said, well, this one. Negative 3 plus a negative 5 is equal to a negative 8. Negative 3 times a negative 5 equals a positive 15. So this is going to be a negative 3. This is going to be a negative 5. Okay, and you should always go back to your answer, and you're going to FOIL this out. If you, in your mind, went through FOIL, you should get that trinomial. Okay, let's try one more. Let's do x squared plus 6xy minus 16y squared. Okay, let's look at one that has two variables in it. Okay, again, we look at that first term, that's an x squared. So how do we get an x squared? Well, we're going to take an x times an x. Okay, when I go to this back number, it's got a y squared with it, but let's just look at the negative 16. What times what would give me a negative 16? Well, I could use a negative 1 times a negative, or times a positive 16. In order to get something that's negative, the signs will have to be different. But I could do a positive 1 and a negative 16. I could do a negative 2 and a positive 8. Or I could do a positive 2 and a negative 8. Or I could do a negative 4 and a positive 4. Okay, all of those products would give me negative 16. Okay, I want the one that's going to, when I add them together, is going to give me a positive 6. So if I look at my possibilities here, I'm going to get a positive 6 out of that combination right there. Negative 2 and a positive 8. If I add those together, I get a positive 6. If I multiply those, I get the negative 16. So when I put those into my parentheses, now if I just stop there, if I FOIL this out, am I going to get a 16y squared in a middle term? No, because I don't have a y in here yet. So where does the y go? Well, last term times last term is supposed to give me this negative 16y squared. So I just need to go back here and put a little y with it. Okay, negative 2y times a positive 8y, that's how you get a negative 16y squared. And if you look at the outside product, x times 8y is an 8xy. And here, negative 2y times x, that's a negative 2xy. That's where your positive 6xy is coming from. Okay, so these would be your two factors. Okay, now if you go through your list and you can't find something that will give you that middle term, then we say that it's not factorable, or we call that prime. Just like a prime number can't break down into factors, it's just one in itself. So there's one on your worksheet that's actually a prime answer that you won't be able to find factors to. But everything else you should be able to factor. So give that a shot, and we'll see you in the next class period.